welcome, Sudarshan. Really nice to have you back on, on conversations in cryo. Really excited to bring you on board as well. Yes, we can hear you, Sudarshan. Thank you so much for joining us here today at what is apparently a very odd hour for you. so, so let's
It's
start with
still
a quick
it's fine.
introduction. Yeah, thank you for that. So, Sudarshan, let's start with a quick introduction. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourselves to our audience today, and then we can get started.
Sure. Thanks for the nice intro. I'm Sudharshan Vasudevan. I've been working with Facebook for the past 3 years. I've been in the industry working at Yahoo, Uber, and Facebook for past like 15 to 20 years at this point. I have come across multiple very interesting architectural problems that we have been solving across multiple different solutions spaces such as ads, mail, and other amazing architectures in general. Um, so overall, my breadth is I'm mostly a backend engineer with good amount of knowledge in artificial intelligence and also in data mining.
Mhm.
Um, I have about 20 patents approved, and I have been working close to the most interesting topics for the past like 12, 13 years at this point.
All right. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, folks, I think we have a very accomplished, definitely a very accomplished person here speaking with us today. It's not the first time. So, Sudarshan, this is the second time he's coming here to share some of his work experience related matters, also his insight into the industry as he has seen it evolve over the past, 15 to 20 years. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is artificial intelligence. How is it evolving, and how can it be utilized in order to augment and further tech careers? Generally, where is this whole trend going, right? So that's going to be the focus for the day. Sudarshan, I'll also give you a quick insight into our audience today, right? Many of them aspiring software developers, some of them already accomplished software developers who are looking to take their careers to the next level, right? Generally, very plugged into the tech ecosystem, very bullish, I'm sure, about the tech ecosystem as well. They've seen multiple waves of how tech has gone from strength to strength, and they are faced today with a new wave, artificial intelligence. Uh, and everybody wants to capitalize on that, and they're curious about it. They want to learn more about it, and more than going into the nuts and bolts of how artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence that has become popular now, thanks to ChatGPT, right? And OpenAI and all the wonderful work they're doing, and also all the many other companies that have also sprung up and created some very, very significant AI-based, use cases, whether it is image generation, video generation and production, and many, many other things, generative text, predictive and generative text, so many things. I mean, the space is just blowing up right in front of us. And the audience here today uh, definitely want to know more about where this trend is going, how to get started with a career in AI, perhaps applied AI, and just get some of your thoughts as well and your insights as well regarding that. Right, so that is the audience for you here today. All right, uh,
Uh, yeah.
cool. So let's dive straight into the topic. Okay, the software development landscape definitely evolving. It's definitely seeing a shift with the advent of AI based tools, Copilot from GitHub and many other things. Even Replit, I think, is investing pretty heavily into all these technologies. What are your high level, top of mind thoughts about these things?
So again, this is at a very high level. In general, anything new, anything that is technically this advanced uh, will uh, will be scrutinized considerably before we start using it. The first thing that we will start looking into is how it can actually help us creating better products. That will be the first focus in general. So you can see that Gen AI is being applied in many interesting fields at this point. For example, you can actually open your WhatsApp right now, and there'll be a Meta AI with which you can actually start talking. Uh, you can make it create GIFs. You can make it create images, videos, and that will basically be the initial trend. Um, uh, and The second step is how we can incorporate that into tech. First focus will mostly be product and product-oriented services. The second, once that proliferation is deep, then we will start investing heavily into tech. Now, a little bit about tech and how Gen AI could transform tech. Basically, what we anticipate is um, there is fundamental building blocks, which is system design, fundamental architecture, and those problems are very critical and could be understood and internalized and applied only by humans, right? And there are tools on top of this that is necessary to execute on these designs and concepts. For example, in the primitive culture, initially it was all zeros and ones, and then we started using simple languages, and then it became C, then C++, Java. And then at this point, we starting creating tools on top of these languages. So you can think of GenAI as one of the tools on top of these languages. So the fundamental building blocks are still needs to be solved by humans, and it is not something that any computer would understand. But the tools will make it easier. If I ask you to write code in 0 and 1, obviously you will not be able to. Though in 78 years back, that's what they used to do. They did not fear that C is coming and C++ is coming and Java is coming. Just like that, but now you feel the ease with which you can write the code, right? But that did not deter you from creating brilliant products.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, in another 10, 15 years from now, GenAI will make it easier for you to code. You don't have to think about how to create a binary tree, right? That will be given to you.
Right.
All you need to solve is how you use that in your ongoing architecture, right?
Right.
Like that's what will be used. So I can tell you right off bat how Meta is using it. We are currently using it in identifying bugs in the system, in identifying issues in multiple smaller issues in the system, and also helping us fill in the blanks. Like if I start typing print and some stuff, it will automatically fill in some of those bugs. But it is just you can think of it as uh, touch-ups on top of the existing knowledge that I have constructed from scratch.
Right.
It will just make my coding faster, but at the end of the day, it is me who will be writing, composing the code.
Right. Right. See, I think, we can probably think of structuring this discussion in two parts. Okay. One is, the impact of generative AI, which is more internal focused. It's within a company. How can it improve efficiency, developer productivity, things like that within a company? And even, for example, the process of building products, the process of iterating over several products, that is an internal facing application of AI. Then, of course, there is the external facing applications of AI where you can do image generation and you can do many interesting things. Image is something that's very prominently visible today. There's text also, of course, that's very prominently visible, right? um, we'll save the second part for a little later, because I think everybody has tasted this. They've seen the images generated by DALI. They've seen the emails and essays being written by Chat GPT and many other tools. So those are things I think many of us have used, touched, felt, and seen, right? But let's spend a little bit of time on the implications of how AI is being used within companies, enhancing the product development process, the product building process, and how our engineers, like you gave a good example of how, figuring out bugs within systems, gaps that might have been overlooked so far, and now because of AI based development tools, they become more visible, right? So let's talk about that. Some more examples where you think, I mean, that's scratching the surface today, of finding internal bugs, doing code audits. But where is this going? Generally, product development and product building process. Your thoughts?
Um, so right now, the scope of GenAI is only this much. So the amount of intelligence that we have given to it, um, what it can do is it can find inefficiencies in the system, and it can help us identify how to improve it. For example, I can ask it, okay, so what is the fastest way to iterate in a particular code base? Like, for example, should I use a for loop, or like, should I iterate in, there are many ways of iteration, say, within Java, right? So it can actually tell us, okay, in this particular case, do these kind of filtering before you go through the data sets. So you can actually feed it necessary information, and it can then say, okay, do these kind of optimizations before you actually do these parsing to make the entire thing faster. So um, we have come to a point where um, you should think of it as like a tool. Like, basically, it is not capable of coming up with the answer on the first iteration. You have to keep telling it, okay, this is not optimized enough. This is an alternate approach. Is this more optimal? And then it will evaluate and then get back to us saying, yeah, this is probably slightly faster than this option. So that's the way in which we are currently using it within Facebook. But to make it more faster, so basically, so as I told you, it's basically at this point only looking at code and not at the system level. To make it understand at a system level, I think we need to go from Chat GPT to something much more higher versions, because it is not capable of abstracting to the point where it can go and rewrite. Say Instagram is written in Django. It is not capable of taking that thing and just converting it into Java and making it efficient on its own. So that I don't think it is currently possible. They are trying, to be frank, but it is not coming up with that optimal version. So um, uh, that would probably be the next best option, which is basically taking an existing architecture. Say Instagram is written in Python, which is concurrency is not as efficient. And it is like millions of lines in code. And taking those files and then converting into Java in a much more structured, extremely fastly execution phase is probably something that we will automatically want to do. In the past, that that work would have gone to, like, say, hundreds of employees. But now probably with 10 employees and Chat GPT, it is possible to actually do it. But you have to understand that those 10 employees have to know Java in and out to guide the system.
Sure.
So what will happen in the future is breadth will not become important. What you have to build is a depth of understanding.
Right.
Say, for example, you are Java, assume that you're working on Java, you have to become a Java guru. That's what you'll start specializing in. And you will start becoming this information machine that on your own, that when ChatGPT comes in, you will actually be providing it information, and you will be the critical training model on your own, working with the ChatGPT and then creating that in-depth information for it to work correctly. So the expectation will be, for going forward, you will use ChatGPT for some some level of optimizations, but then you will be expected to go deep dive, understand the complexities of the system, and then guide the ChatGPT algorithm. So that will become much more critical. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a parallel that I have seen in the past decade, for example, where code editors became really good, really powerful, right? Previously, you had to know syntax, you had to know specific syntax or specific libraries, methods within certain libraries. You had to know these things. Then you got these really powerful code editors. Autocomplete became very simple. So if you just type, for example, the name of a method that you want to use, a sample autocomplete version of, how to utilize this, some templated way would just come there. And then you start off with that, and then you change a few things according to the use case, right? And even there, I think a lot of developers, the adoption of that, even to this day, is embarrassingly low, right? Many of them still like to type things out. They still want to go to Stack Overflow and copy paste templated code. I mean, some sample code available from there, right? All that tends to happen even today. Adoption is very low. Now we have something like Spark or let them fix it. Okay, nice. Now that everyone is awake, we'll continue with the conversation. See, now it's not just, I mean, autocomplete itself, adoption is very low. At least when I interact with developers, I see them still typing out so many things. I'm like, man, there's already an autocomplete available. Why don't you use it, right? And then now, of course, AI comes into the picture. Um, is there a reason why some of these things don't get adopted so readily, and people still go back to almost first principles in some cases, or at least somewhere in between, which is still suboptimal when a better option exists? And if that is the case, why? What are your thoughts about why that happens?
It's mostly due to unfamiliarity of the system. Like, for example, I was a Vim user for about 15 years. Vim is like, it's the most fundamental editor that you can
Yes,
use.
my favorite as
Uh,
well. So go Web.
you can add a lot of plugins to Vim
Yes.
to make it very powerful. So basically, not a lot of people understand that. So it's the more you so the problem is, assume that you actually will take 20 minutes to write a code, and you know that that could be a plugin. Think of, so everything is already built in, and you just have to go and search for a plugin. Instead of spending 20 minutes on writing the code, some people tend to go and find the necessary plugins, so that in the future, if something else comes, you can use that plugin. So not a lot of people do that. Unfortunately, they tend to stick to the most basic um, ideas of whatever IntelliJ or whatever you use. You don't end up using those additional plugins, which is a mistake. So whichever editor you end up choosing, make sure that you actually try to understand what are the powerful things that you can do within that thing. So even ChatGPT, I'm very sure if you ask certain questions in a very wrong way, I'm sure it will emit very wrong responses. And I think that will happen very frequently because it's a generative AI and it actually doesn't validate what it is emitting. So even in the future, I'm sure people will just ask it some question and it will say, yes, I definitely know that this is the right answer, even in coding. And people will just use it. I'm sure that will happen. So with every tool, it's very critical to be understanding of what is the pros and cons of the tool, understanding what are all the add-ons that the tool will provide. All that understanding should come. So you should have the inherent curiosity to understand the tool and make yourself better by using the most optimal version of the tool. Not many people do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've seen that some very productive people, they use these things, definitely aids in their productivity. And then when technologies like Copilot and other things come about, Copilot, for those who are not aware of it, um, you can think about it like a plugin on GitHub if you're coding using GitHub based. editors, or I'm sure there are plugins available for other editors as well. It will code with you, and it can give you suggestions of what you can do and how to basically write your code better. And if you're not utilizing these things, you can still get the job done, but definitely it's a handicap that you don't have to nurse. A little bit of investment in learning some of these tools and skills will boost your productivity, make you a better software developer, help you get things done faster, better, certainly cheaper, because all of you cost a lot of money, right? So lesser time, fewer bugs. So adoption, I think, is something very useful for your own careers as well as the company, right? See, some of the next part about adoption is, see, the training data coming for many of these companions, code companions, for example, or like Copilot or other tools, right? Comes from existing code. Um, if you want to integrate it within your current company, there's a certain style, there are certain nuances with which your current company is working. There, I mean, do you have to train on your specific code base, or is it okay to use code companions, like AI-based code companions that are trained on generally a large repository of open source software, which will still be very useful for you within the company, but might need some tweaking. I mean, just talk to me about the training data set and the relevance of the tools that have been created as code companions. How effective would they be for a specific company, for a specific use case, things like that? Are there some shortcomings there? Your thoughts on that?
So right now, I work on 3 different languages, right? And we use code companions across 3 different languages, all these 3 different languages. For a couple of them, the code companion is not good at all. It's actually absolutely irritating to use code companion. But say in case of Java or in case of say C++, the inherent depth and the right kind of architectures that are in place that the code companion can infer from is actually quite extensive. So in some languages, in some scenarios, it's actually very beneficial to use. But in some cases, like say, we use Hack PHP and we use Python. In such cases, it's not that great. Because it can fill in some amount of gaps, but it is not to the extent where it will actually give us a more comprehensive structure. Like what kind of design patterns to use, or what kind of fundamental principles that we need to use in certain cases. I can write a comment and ask it to generate the code, but most of the time in these unsupported languages, it's actually not good at all. In case of Java, it can actually suggest the right design flow, and in some cases, the right design patterns. And I can even say, no, let us actually use mixin in this case. And it'll actually suggest, okay, what kind of mixins you want to use. And so I don't want to go in depth into how we are using it in Java, but we note that some languages like Java is quite nicely supported. We actually use it within something called as VS Code. It's very proprietary, so obviously I will be able to comment on what you have been talking about. But like, just watch out. Again, whenever you are interacting with this, if it is emitting some code, reevaluate and give it suggestions. That will actually help it make it better. If you just consume whatever it is emitting, I can assure you it's like you will be writing substandard code at that point.
See, how will developer workflows evolve given the presence and availability and ready availability of such tools? Like, let's take a simple example to make it more concrete, right? Say a backend web developer, right? Probably working on a Java Spring Boot tech stack, right? Would you go and say, add a new API endpoint called this that can do XYZ, and then give additional requirements about, how some business logic or validation checks have to be done, or some authentication and authorization checks have to be
Interesting.
included. So walk me through, just paint a picture of what those, maybe it exists today, but what are those developer workflows that exist today? What are coming up? What do you think will come up like very soon, the next 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, something like that? Let's not talk too far out in the future. What are your thoughts about that?
So I can tell you, it is really good at creating skeleton code at this point.
Mm,
So, for example, as you called out, um, API structure,
mm,
um, then creating the model and the corresponding database fetches. Basically, we can say write the necessary parts for fetching information from database, like uh,
mm,
because those models and those hooks that are necessary to write in Java, that will not change at all.
mm,
Um, and how to write the most optimal, say, DB fetcher. Say, for example, assume that you're using MySQL. I'm not sure what databases you will use, but
sure.
in most scenarios, you can actually write what you want to fetch from database, and it should be able to create those kind of high-level queries. Those are, I think, fundamentally possible even now.
Mm,
What is not possible is to write it a more optimal way. Um, so basically, it will not actually look at, oh, what is the timeout, or how much time should be given to databases,
okay.
how much pool connections should be maintained, how
Mm,
should those pool connections should be cleaned up, how the so in case of Java, there's no garbage collection.
right.
Um, but in case of C++, how should we create that, make sure there are no memory leaks, all those things. It's not automatically done at this point. So basically, if we go step by step, as you said, we can start with API, then you can write um, how certain parts of the code, like database fetches, you can write UI components to some extent. So those are possible, but something more optimal is currently not possible, which I think what will become more important going forward. How to fetch and write and certain, for example, if you are writing something around mm, a Kafka broker, what is the how should the broker be set up? How many connections? How much is the connection capacity? How much data transfer needs to be done?
Mm,
All these things um, we still have to configure at this point.
mm.
And depending on the application to application, it will become more optimal. But the basic skeleton can be automated even now, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I would have imagined that these are, for example, how many SQL lookups, uh, how many SQL connections are being initiated? For what purpose are these connections being initiated? What is the nature of the query, and then the result that you're getting back from the SQL database? Uh, this seems like a very prime something that an AI-based tool would be readily good at, because it doesn't require any qualitative input from a human being. It just has to sit, monitor, observe, measure, and then suggest some more optimal ways of making these queries, or reducing some of these queries, batch some sort of batch processing, or even, for example, caching, SQL caches.
Yes.
What is the prime target to add to a cache? Things like that. So this is just measurement and then optimizing some of these things. Uh, I would have imagined that something like an AI-based tool would be very good at something like this, or with relatively low effort, because very little subjective input required
There
from
are
it.
tools to do this,
Okay.
but the existing generative AI based tooling, that the coding will not be able to do these things. There are tools
Mm,
monitoring status. So the way in which we normally would do it is
mm,
to create a flow, understand how much traffic is going to come through, understand how much can each of these database can handle. All that analysis
Mm.
comes with some amount of intuition um,
Got it.
that we have.
Right.
That currently, obviously, these tools will not have. Um, so, but the expectation is that once we start interacting with these tools, start giving it necessary information over a period of time,
Mhm.
and we also need to add the necessary infrastructure to make the tool understand what we are providing these information
Right.
as,
Right.
then it should be possible. But I think that's a bit far off. It's not at the yeah. I think the current way in which people are using it is mostly how I expect it to be used for another at least few months, unless there's something fundamental that happens. But
Mm.
uh,
Okay.
basically, just writing slightly suboptimal code, copy paste instead of you searching and copy pasting, it will provide you the template and it will actually fill it for you.
Okay.
That's basically how I expect people to use it, at least for
Okay.
next week.
Okay, that's interesting. I think definitely a lot of very interesting problems to be solved here as well.
Yeah.
You could think of, the generative tool, the code companion, if you will, getting inputs from some sort of a profiling tool, and like a database profiling AI product or a machine learning product that tells you, okay, these are cases where we have optimization issues, and then the feeding as input to a code companion tool and saying, look, instead of doing it this way, why don't you do it this way so that you can reduce the number of, yeah, it's certainly very very interesting developer
I don't
productivity use
expect it
cases.
to happen anytime soon. It's just that I expect that's where basically things will become all the easy mid-level niche things will become automatable.
Uh-huh.
Niche things will still something that humans will retain control of.
Okay.
So that's basically how things will normally evolve. Yeah.
Do you think that is because every use case is different, and that's why the creativity of a human being or an input of a human being is required? And use case meaning different companies do things differently, and it's so difficult to
Generally.
make a general solution work for everyone.
That is correct. Basically, you can think of it like this. Why do people do PhDs, right? Like to expand that, that's a small dent that every person makes. It's like basically to make that small dent, you have to understand in depth
Mm.
a lot of information that
Right.
generally is not readily available. There's
Mm.
some inherent knowledge that you have to create about the system, and
Right.
that is not something any generative AI can actually understand. So the more niche you become, more structured and focused your thought process becomes,
Mm.
more successful you will be, and more non-replaceable you will be.
Got it. From a Gen AI perspective, is this a training set problem? I mean, there's not enough out there for you to train on, for you to become good enough at these things, at these niches. Is it a training problem, training data set?
Um, it's a bit difficult to answer that because if there is a lot of training set, there will be it'll basically you'll be creating very niche Gen AI,
Mm.
and that is not generally useful. Sometimes building the Gen AI cost will be much costlier than actually having a human in that place.
Sure.
Um,
Right.
yeah, for example, I can replace a human who's just doing simple SQL query, lookup, and then entering it into a accounting. Like for example, there are all H&R blocks, right?
Mhm.
H&R blocks can be replaced by Gen AI.
Right.
So just as an example, like all the basic accounting stuff can be replaced by Gen AI. All this basic legal stuff can be replaced by Gen AI. Like generating like like hundreds of pages in legal um, word is replaceable by Gen AI. But how do you structure a court case is still something that only your knowledge with niche information can actually do.
Got it.
Um, yeah, it's something, for example, let us take legal as an example, right? Like, or
Mhm.
even accounting as an example. H&R block, as I told you, like we are doing, I don't know. Here we call it as 1040. Every year we will do it. So doing that, anybody can do it. Like, so that can be done by GenAI. But if you want to do some optimizations, get some money back from government, that thing only some people will never do. So that will not be easily replaceable by. Yeah.
Got it. Interesting. Any other upcoming, underutilized, um, AI applications within the product development and product building process, that you think will start becoming more and more prominent in the, say, coming months?
My
Yeah.
expectation is all front-end focused stuff
Mhm.
will become much more GenAI heavy. So React, I think they are working very hard to actually have React, JavaScript, and GenAI work. Same thing for Java and GenAI to work. So that a lot of things can be auto built. You can just give it, okay, build this kind of UI with this kind of functionality, and it will just build it for you. So,
Mhm.
those will be the initial optimizations opportunities.
Mhm.
I expect that we will probably land within the next 1 to 2 years.
Right.
Um, so after that comes much more core optimizations um, like obviously the controlling language will never change. Like business language
Mhm.
is something only humans can write. So speaking with the product manager or a project manager, getting the ask, converting that to code, that will still probably remain more human controllable with some assistance from GenAI.
Mhm.
That will not change. But how to connect to database, fetching from databases, all the templatable stuff,
Sure.
those will be GenAI. So there are parts of which is possible, but my thought process is like mostly we'll start with more front end because it's more easy to visualize and there's a lot of available code around that,
Got it.
available tools around that. So
Got
yeah.
it. Right. So, as a software developer or aspiring software developers in the audience today, right, they are chalking out their path. What should their next 5 years, 10 years? They're thinking about it. These things are very new, and it appears from the outside that a lot of this is progressing extremely fast, and it's so difficult to keep up with all the things that are going on. In the context of these changes, these improvements, right? How does a software developer starting out today uh, chalk out their own development journey? um, you know Obvious fears and apprehensions people have: will AI replace my job? Right, that is a little bit of a, I mean, it's a palpable concern that many people have. In my view, uh, a part of that is kind of extreme as well. It's an extreme fear, not necessarily substantiated in truth today. Potentially for the next couple of years as well. Is definitely a lot of software developers required still relevant. But generally, talk me through your thoughts about, how do you chalk out your own paths? Yeah,
Uh,
with AI. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's a good question. So basically, my recommendation to anybody who's joining is for the first 2 to 3 years, understand what you want to focus. There are a lot of things to focus in life. You can be a front-end developer, you can be a back-end developer, you can be a data engineer, you can be a data scientist, you can be a data analyst, and you can be something of a middle in all of these parts. Or a product manager or program manager who doesn't like code. Let's forget about that for now. So in this set of components, even assume that you want to become a backend engineer or a data engineer. Choose this what you want to become within the next like for 1 to 2 years, and the next 2 years, choose one specific field and try to start focusing in depth in that field. Um, Within 5 years, if you want to become irreplaceable, the depth in that field will become more critical. So for example, if I'm going to start off right now, I would start off as a Java developer, for example. I because that's something that I'm more interested in backend engineering. I'm more interested in CPU optimizations, latency optimizations. understanding the bottlenecks in the system and fixing them with architectural optimizations. That's what I am inherently interested in. So in which case I will concentrate more on Java or C++, and within Java, what kind of tools that I need to learn to make myself irreplaceable. That's what I will concentrate on. For that, you have to read. It's not enough if you do start with Java, essential Java and all that stuff. That's not enough. You have to keep writing a lot of project, understand bottlenecks in the system. So for that work, start off with this. I'm not sure, depending on the project. For example, in case of Facebook, we have large running systems with bottlenecks in place from which you can learn. The other option is to learn from other people's experience. There are certain websites such as Medium, even LinkedIn these days are really good. There are a lot of other things. So try to learn from those places. Even Creo, I think, has really good project that you can learn from, list of projects that you can learn from. So do a lot of those. And within that, once you get a feeling of where you're comfortable with, go in depth in those set of projects. Try to, if Creo is going to give you give a project with this much scope, try to create your own scope. Try to expand that scope on your own with your own interest to make a better project out of what was given to you. Right? And that will help you explore and then go in depth as well, basically. How to, for example, how to run certain things very fast, how to make sure that it consumes less CPU or memory, how does it connect to database, how to make sure that the database does not die at all, how to make sure that there is enough backup to the database. So try to learn in depth in those set of things. So that's how you become not replaceable. No, nothing, I can assure you, anything in the future will replace that knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the examples I give is when Photoshop came about, people thought creative visual artists will become totally outdated and nobody will hire anyone because Photoshop can do everything for you. If anything, it has created even more designers and even more visual designers. And all of them have become significantly better at their job because something so strong like Photoshop exists today. And my personal take is, that's what will happen with the inclusion of AI-based code companions or other things. It'll only make you even more productive and help you do much better quality work, much faster, better throughput. That's some thoughts that I have. All right, so for all of you in the audience, we'll take about 1 or 2 questions. You can add them, and I'll just try to summarize. But in the meantime, one final question from my side to Sudarshan, right? What are the type of interesting companies, the company side space, the universe of companies out there that are doing very interesting work into incorporating AI into their product development workflows, readily using all these things? What are those companies? If you could give examples of maybe 1 or 2 companies that are approaching it very differently, but still sort of going head first into AI and sort of completely embracing this. Your thoughts about the space there, the landscape?
I obviously will talk about the big ones, like
Of course.
so Microsoft Teams is integrating it very deeply into to OpenAI. Microsoft Teams is like, for example, Teams is what so Slack, so every company will have a communication mechanism. Teams is one such mechanism. So it's basically like chat, right? Like how you chat with other people in your company. So the Teams team is actually trying to integrate Chat GPT into the system. Similarly, Microsoft Teams is doing really good. Google is also doing really good. You would have seen the things today, Galileo, all those things. They are doing very deep integration in that. And Meta is also doing very deep integration to AI. We have like a very big team working on AI. Right now, I can go to any document in our system. I can say TLDR. Instead of going through the entire document, it will give me like a nice 200 word summary of what the document is. it will be, I can assure you, like every line of it will be absolutely perfect to read. So there are a lot of applications that we are all working on. So in general, the three big guys, Microsoft, Google, and Meta, we are all having very big um, Gen AI tools for investing very heavily in this area and having really excellent applications around this. Um,
Interesting. I'll also share a short anecdote on how we are using some of these up and coming technologies within Cryo itself, uh, with with interview preparation, or even communication skills. When some of our candidates really have a difficult time and need that extra practice, we give them a list of questions and say, record yourself. Uh, think this is a real interview. Turn on your camera and speak this once, twice, thrice, right? And then we will make sure we review your submissions and give you feedback about what you can improve on. And behind the scenes, we use tools to generate transcripts. We use AI tools to parse or analyze the content of what you spoke, and then give a subjective rating on where, first of all, what is a 5 point scale, what does it, where are you along energy and communication skills, depth of content, relevance of content, things like that. uh, and then further from there, what can you do to improve some of these things. And in interviews you have to keep speaking and you have to practice a lot of this repeatedly before you get the confidence and how to structure your answers. Definitely helps a little bit. It's a small example of how we have integrated some of these technologies to help people become better at interviewing. Okay. Cool. So I think we've covered most of it. There's just one interesting question. A field of software that AI cannot affect. We covered it somewhat with respect to the niches and other things. But I'll put a spin on that question. What are some use cases where you should avoid using AI-based technologies, where humans can do significantly better, and bringing in AI only might slow things down? You might have a ready answer or not, but anyway, I thought, why not just open it up? Yeah.
Whenever you are writing something more optimal, whenever you're if you're trying to write something template, use AI. If you're going to optimize on, if you want to write something more optimal, start with the template, but like you have to write the optimization. That is the expectation here. To find the optimizations, to find the bugs, it is better if it is done by humans at this point. Unit testing, for example, can be done very well by AI. But to give it test cases, you have to mention these edge cases. I don't think which any AI will come.
All right.
So
Cool.
there's
Yeah.
one more question on the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Please go ahead. From Digvijay. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if you're looking for next 5 years, if you want to concentrate on being backend engineer or AI, both are very critical. Depends on what speaks to you. I am not a modeling engineer. I do not model. I don't come up with mathematics around the model. I actually come up with the infrastructure that will execute the model, and how that infrastructure is like running in milliseconds or nanos, or like whatever fast speed that you can think of. That's what I concentrate on. There is offline processing of information, and then how to use that offline processing to actually benefit billions of requests per second. That's what I concentrate on, which is delivering of those information in a very fast, trustable way. So for that, you need backend engineering. That no Gen AI can do, obviously. And similarly, what kind of modeling that needs to run? That is AI and ML based optimizations. So basically, should we use, in this case, mm, say for example, I don't want to go too much into ML model, but let us consider there is simple linear regression which can be built within 1 or 2 days, and there is very complicated modeling concepts, PSA and all that stuff, which I don't want to go into, but which will require a lot of analysis, understanding, running random forest iterations to evaluate which features are best, and then including those features along with the modeling score. That is also very interesting to work on. It's just what speaks to you is very important. Do you actually like to do a lot of mathematical modeling, or do you like to optimize, identify bottlenecks, and then optimize the infrastructure? That is what we want to work on. For me, it's the latter, but it depends on you. But whatever you choose, you should become really good at it. That is very important. You should not, you should get up next day morning and think, okay, what is the problem that I'm going to solve today? That should motivate you. So you need to identify that work. So both of it will be hireable 5 years from now. But if you want to earn slightly, say 1.2x money, AI ML will help you earn the 20% more amount of money. But for that, please do note that you'll be competing with a bunch of PhDs. So if you want to, for a backend engineer, our experience is what will make us. We cannot actually learn from reading books or doing this thing. So ours will, we write a lot of code identifying a lot of bottlenecks and then building architecture around it. In case of AI ML engineers, they will read through a lot of papers, understand each paper. They will try to come up optimizations around the paper and try to convert a use case and see if a particular paper that they read actually can apply to that particular use case, and then understand how to implement it in real world. For that, you need more that kind of thought process. You need to do MS, PhD, and then more in a heavy investment, and then come into this ML world. Again, two different thought process, both of them very lucrative. I can assure you, backend developer or ALM. Yeah. But ML will pay you like 1.2x now.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, and thank you for those thoughts, right? So there's no replacement for your own skill, right? The more competent and more skilled you are, the better advantage you can take of the emergent AI technologies, the applications for AI when they roll out or as they are being built. You can be part of the building process of how to use AI in a particular context. You could be there, or once someone has provided that application, using it in order to build something else on top of it, which requires deep skills in your own area. AI is an augment. It can augment your capabilities really well, but if you don't have the capabilities, it can't create them for you, right? So I think from a personal skill development, career planning standpoint, like Sudarshan was also mentioning, right, become really good at something and go really deep and understand it really, really well. And then use AI to sort of leapfrog and take your skills to the next level and build something really awesome, really cool. The other aspects about, the hard tech in AI, which is creating these models or creating these, training systems and pipelines, that is research, definitely very lucrative, but a very, very different type of career choice. Definitely requires masters, PhD, etc. You have to become some sort of a monk in order to become really good at some of these things. We don't need too many of those. Of course, if you're one of them, you will be very, very sought after, highly sought after. But there's enough space on the other side where you're using the work, like GPT-4 is available. Can you use it in order to build some specific use case? Right? I think a lot of options there as well. Right? And in the latter, your skills matter. The hard technical skills you have in your specific domains, backend development, it could be SQL modeling, it could be so many other things. It could be front-end development, app development, it could be solving Teams kind of use cases, Slack, Teams, Discord kind of use cases, making it even better. Plenty of applications of AI that you can use in those areas as well, right? So I think definitely exciting time for software developers. Sudarshan, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Anything that you would like to add as a parting note, parting words of advice to all the attendees here today?
Yeah, don't be scared. If you feel scared, fear is a choice. You can choose to study more. You can choose to practice more, uh, and keep, making yourself a better person, knowledgeable person. Right? That's the way in which you can compete. Um, just being scared will not help you at all. I can assure you, like, if even say in my case, if I know that okay, my job will be replaced by Gen AI in say like 2 to 3 years, then what is the option for me? I have to become better and more niche, or I need to find something that I'm really good at, so I become non-replaceable. And I can assure you, like, there's a plenty of scope. So just face it head on. It's not a big deal. I'm sure that everybody felt very scared when SQL people were writing SQL, then became there were Hadoop and for data processing, streaming, and everything. And people were at every point people were scared, but all those new architectures ended up creating more and more jobs. So Silicon Valley it's never less jobs. Anything new comes, actually there'll be more jobs. So you don't have to worry about
All right. I
it.
think we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Sudarshan, for taking time to come speak to us. I certainly learned a lot, and hopefully, I'm sure people in the audience as well today have benefited from your insights. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.